Hi, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Numbers. My name is Dave Bookbinder, and welcome to the show that goes beyond the data to explore the people, the stories, and all the insights that drive business success. Thank you for joining us today. And today's guest is a founder and a successful business owner, entrepreneur. She's helped CEOs and business owners scale their businesses. She is Andrea Beach, and she's the CEO of Growth Concierge. Andrea, welcome to Behind the Numbers.
So glad to be here, Dave.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and Growth Concierge?
Sure. So lifelong entrepreneur, started selling lemonade stands and things like that when I was little. I've actually owned 22 companies, and I'm proud to say that all the hard lessons I learned and eventually the success habits and tips and patterns that led to the process of creating successful companies, I finally rolled all into one. So this is what I would consider my greatest hits album. So Growth Concierge is what I wished I'd always had. And what I mean by that is when I would grow a company, I'd get to that 5-7 million mark and I'd start to hit a weird break point where maybe the staff I had or the technology that I had used got me there, but then I couldn't go past. I couldn't really grow. And I thought, well, I don't have the money to afford what I needed. So instead of hiring a fractional expert, which is very popular these days, who will come in and tell you what you've done wrong and what you need to do right, but you're still stuck not being able to deliver on that unless you have the money or the staff or expertise to do it. We've put together a brand new model. It's a membership model, so it continues to grow with you over time, where for the cost of one employee, you get an entire team of fractional CMO, CXO, CFO, whatever you need. These folks are all 7-figure, very, very seasoned entrepreneurs who've been there, done that. And not only do you get an entire team, like a special operations team, to come in and help you with every area of your business, but they're supported by almost 100 people underneath them who are actually going to redo your website, fix your social, enhance your IT support, whatever it is. So no CEO needs to be told more things what they need to do. They need somebody to implement and help them do it. And so that's all included in that membership model.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They don't need the how, they need the actual implementation. Let's start with your entrepreneurial journey. 22 companies, Andrea. How do you manage to do that?
Well, I just was stubborn, I guess, or foolish to the point where I wasn't going to give up. And I would say about half of those were miserable failures or learning lessons, as they say. And then I finally got a pretty decent batting average. But what was funny, Dave, is every time I thought I'd figured something out and was really good at it, I would try it again in a different sector or a different market, and it wouldn't work. And so reading hundreds of books, attending every seminar, webinar, learning from the greats, and then finally putting my own spin on it.
Yeah, why don't you share a little bit of your ups and downs, if you don't mind? I know the audience really appreciates understanding, as you point out, that failures are lessons and they're opportunities to start over. But what were some of the highlights that you learned?
Well, the first thing I learned was I didn't have to do everything. And I was a bit of a control freak because I was worried about quality and I just wanted to make sure that I had my hand on everything. So I had to finally get to the point where I could trust that the people that I brought onto the team, if they were qualified and they, were solutions minded, that they could handle their role. So I had to let go of some of the control a little bit and trust. And sometimes that worked out and sometimes it didn't, but then I got better at hiring and I get better at partnering. And one of the things that I learned early on that I was wrong about, very wrong, I used to think I could only hire who I could afford. And I would get maybe 6, 7, 10 resumes and just pick the best one. And I realize now how flawed that was. And in fact, when I had my biggest wins was when I punched way above my weight and had somebody come in that I could never afford. But the way I did it creatively, where they either shared in the upside or, they took a piece of the action, or maybe they were just bored with what they were doing and they didn't need the big fat salaries and the benefits that I couldn't afford. They wanted something. But they were hungry for whatever the dream or the vision was. And so if you get really creative on compensation and make sure that the other person has autonomy in their role, you can actually get some unbelievable talent to come in and help you way before you could afford them.
Yeah, an interesting point, because what you just hit on there when you talk about buying into the mission, that's something that we hear a lot about, and how it's a key driver in attracting and retaining people. And to your point, you're trying to hire seasoned people punching above your weight, as you say. And it's not about the comp. It's really about the vision and mission, huh?
That's right. And also about the passion that they bring in wanting to accomplish something bigger than themselves. And if they see a pathway to doing that, the the benefit to them is so much greater than any type of compensation. So they could go out and make money anywhere. But if they're not filling their cup, then they're miserable. So having the opportunity to do something that's exciting or, has an impact on the world, whatever their motivators and drivers are, you just lean into that and they're more than happy to come in and lend their expertise.
That's great. I want to talk to you a little bit about the letting go of control thing, because it's a regular theme when I talk to business owners, entrepreneurs, and interview folks on this program. It is the number one thing. As the top of the org chart, you feel like you have to know it all, do it all, and responsible for everything. And it's hard to delegate. And if you're going to do it, it's going to get done right. All that, everything that goes with it, all the head trash and associated behaviors. How did you finally break through that and get the aha that you needed to let go?
Kicking and screaming. I didn't do it willingly. It happened because I actually had somebody who came in and joined my organization who at the time, I think I was doing maybe 1.2 million a year in that business. It was a technology company I owned. And she was a 480,000 base plus, 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 so overall comp would have been around 700,000. There's no way I could have afforded her at the time. And she came in all excited about the vision and what we were trying to build. And when she came to her first meeting, the first team meeting, it changed everything: the discipline, the expertise, some just even the programs that she used for tracking metrics and things. It immediately converted and made a huge impact on the business. And that was the first moment I thought, wow, she is so much better than I am. Like, there's no way I could be that good at her role. And I had that same epiphany on the tech side and on the marketing side and on different areas. And so I kept realizing if I would just let go and let better people come in and actually do what they do and just support them and let them go thrive, we all win.
Awesome. This may overlap with your personal journey, but I'm sort of shifting the gears here towards Growth Concierge. But when you're working with clients, and again, in your own experience, you had mentioned when we first met about a revenue bottleneck where businesses are able to scale pretty effectively up to a certain level. And then they sort of hit a wall. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? What is that scaling revenue bottleneck? And then maybe how do we get through that?
Yeah, and oftentimes businesses think they're unique. They say, "Oh, you don't understand my business." And what I found is working with hundreds and hundreds of businesses in different sectors is it's kind of the 80-20 rule. They're all pretty much the same. There might be a few subtle nuances, but in general, if you have cobbled together a technology solution where maybe you're the one who created the process and then you're using Excel or you're using some kind of, QuickBooks or something, that worked until you get a certain point where maybe it doesn't work. You can't use your sister-in-law to do your books anymore. You actually need a professional CRM. You get to the point where handwriting estimates and, a spit and a handshake isn't going to cut it anymore. But the problem is you have Frankenstein together this kind of cobbled together solution that's not duplicatable. It's not scalable in and of itself. So it requires working on the business, which is sometimes hard for them to step away. But if you can take a look from an outside perspective and say, well, what is it that is efficient about this and works well, and what do we need to revisit? That's the first way that you can get through some of those breakthroughs and hurdles. And it usually happens on the process side and on the technology side first. And then I would argue the very next thing you need to look at is talent. And on the human capital side, sometimes the people that got you there are not going to ultimately get you where you want to go. In fact, I would argue most of the time that's the case. And how many times business owners have said to me, but they're like family. That's a problem. I mean, everybody wants to have great culture and they want to enjoy where they work, and you need to have good relationships of trust and, a feeling of camaraderie, but it's a business. It's not personal. And so that's when maybe you need to reappropriate some folks into different roles, or you bring people in potentially above them, which is tricky. Especially with my background in human behavior, this is where I see some nuance that I have to bring into these conversations, because you have to make it a win for everyone. And people either realize that they're going to get on board with that new path, that new breakthrough plan, and grow that business from 7 million to 20 million, or not. And that's where sometimes some of the branches of the tree, not just leaves, might fall away.
Yeah, I want you to talk a little bit about your background in human behavior too, because I think that's an
Mhm.
important part of coloring this whole conversation. But before you do, I just want to share I had worked for a CEO once who was the biggest tough guy exterior, but he was a teddy bear at heart, and he couldn't fire people. He talked a great game with bluster, and what he would do was exactly what you said. He would just bring in people above them and hope that the folks below would get the hint and just exit on their own, which was really not a great strategy.
No, not at all. And there needs to be very honest and open communication about what the plan and the goal and the mission for the company is, because there are plenty of companies that are lifestyle, and they're happy where they are, and they have a particular growth, maybe 2% or something, and they're okay with that as long as they're outrunning inflation. They don't really want to grow. But if the plan is rapid scale and growth with maybe some type of exit or an IPO, or maybe that founder is looking for some personal freedom and to bring someone else in to run that company, that conversation needs to be had with the team. It's not a secret, because that's a very different growth trajectory. And everybody that understands that will then realize that change is inevitable.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about your background in human behavior.
Sure. So for many, many years, I kept it completely separate and apart from what I considered my professional career, which is fun. I laugh when I say that because, man, what a mistake. So early days, right? During college and right out of college, I was very fascinated, with human behavior and psychology. And I ended up becoming certified as a hypnotherapist, and then took a deep dive into training and certification into NLP and DHE, which is design human engineering. And I basically geeked out over anything that makes people tick, why people behave the way they do, especially in the same situation, how so many people can have different reactions and behave differently. I kept that as just a passion. And even though I saw clients and I did that professionally for many years, I also had what I considered kind of my day job. And, I was starting and running and growing companies predominantly in the technology space. And I just didn't see how there was a fit or an overlap for that at all until I ended up in a meeting with a very large beverage company that has a red logo that everyone knows. And they're not used to being told no very often. And they wanted us to build something that was going to be a mistake. It was for March Madness. It was a mobile app for Final Four. And it was flawed, not only on the tech side, but it was very much flawed on the behavioral, use case side of what they wanted to do. And so I told them no, and they didn't like that at all. And we were doing a ton of work for them anyway. And so I was pretty confident we were okay. They get really upset. And they came back a year later after they attempted to do it and it failed. And they said, now, what were we talking about again with that behavioral stuff? And how should we have done this? And I said, well, now it's not free. Uh, and at that moment, Dave, we changed our business. We never did another RFP. That was many decades ago. We've not done an RFP since because we realized that the secret sauce was in understanding kind of those Jedi powers or those behavioral components. That's what actually gave us our first hockey stick in growth on the technology side, because understanding how a 9-year-old girl wields an iPhone is very different than a 72-year-old man. Not just the hardware, but how they apply those pieces of technology, and that's what gave us kind of that secret, silver bullet.
Yeah, and we're going to unpack that a little bit further as we move into this dialogue a little bit deeper. But I want to stay in the area of the challenges and bottlenecks that you're seeing. What are some of the other common things that you're observing in businesses these days?
Money. They get to a certain point and they think, I can't grow unless I have outside money. And that's not necessarily true. Sometimes it's true, but I would say at least half the time there are efficiencies and ways that they can grow, especially now in this gig economy where, they're able to hire, VAs or if anything, hybrid workers to come in and do some of the work that they need for that growth. And just finding the efficiencies can sometimes free up capital that they need to invest in, say, better technology or hire top talent. So sometimes it's just a mindset that, oh no, I'm doing what I'm doing. I need to do more of that. I can't afford to do more of that. Therefore, I can't grow. So taking a real hard look at who are the people on your team, what are the roles that they have, and which ones are creating the biggest impact or maybe even holding you back, and saying the thing I need the most is, and then whatever that is, let's say it's leads, qualified leads. That doesn't mean you have to go hire a whole marketing department and a bunch of inside or outside sales reps. Maybe there are AI platforms out there that can deliver those qualified leads to you on a success basis, meaning you only pay when they're delivering you a qualified lead. And business owners say, I had no idea that existed. It's because they're not paying attention. They're just operating in the framework of the mindset that they've always had. If they've owned the business 8 years, they haven't been paying attention.
Yeah. Can you share maybe a story, case study example of a situation where your SWAT team has been able to come in and look at different facets of a business to facilitate change?
Oh, absolutely. One that's very popular right now is on the healthcare side. There's lots of movement on healthcare and age tech, the aging population, and mental health. We have a lot of work in that space, and it's funny, the more work we do, the more work we get in that space, and we're really qualified there. So it's a fun one because we're affecting real change. And so there's a company that we've been working with where they were doing around 35, 40 million. Their goal was to get to 100 and expand nationwide. They were only in one state. And the problem was they had a little bit of a cultural issue where one person in charge of one area did not get along with the person in charge of another area. So they literally split the company into two in order to continue to grow and not upset anybody. So there's a major cultural divide, which also led to different processes, different reporting, and different ways of applying what they were doing on the business side with their clients. So in the very first meeting that we had, their goal for this year was to get from 39.6 million to 50 million. In the first 90-minute session we had with them, Dave, we got them to 50 million in a 90-minute session simply by taking apart some of the Legos and kind of reassembling them together. And some of that had to do with inefficiencies. And I'm not trying to pick on them. They're actually a really great company. But they have been around for about 11 years. And in 11 years, they had Frankensteined some processes and built some solutions that just were inefficient. And they couldn't see the forest for the trees. So in that 190-minute session, we put their process kind of back together in a way that didn't require another head, so no additional team members. It didn't require any further investment. It was just a more logical way of doing it. And they kind of went, oh my gosh, we never thought about that. Of course, how could they? Because they couldn't see it from the outside. So just by reorienting a few things that they already had, it's like kind of reorganizing your garage. We got them to 50 million. So they were blown away. And then we also saved them, I think more importantly, 80 hours on average a week on some of their inefficient reporting that they were doing. They were all submitting different types of reports. And I don't even know how the CEO was able to do it. He's brilliant to be able to even decipher all the different reports that he got. We were able to streamline that, which was saving about 80 hours a week. And then they had no IT staff or IT support. They were all trying to figure it out and do it on their own. So by streamlining that, we did consider it kind of a video FAQs of the most common IT support questions and problems. It was pretty robust. So nobody had to go run around trying to find the answer. There was one communal place. If they didn't find the answer there, then it got outsourced to a third party IT manager or IT support staff. So again, no additional cost or support. They actually saved on average about 60 hours a week in inefficiencies trying to run around and plug in computers and reboot them. So that's two things that we did, one on the reporting and one on the IT support side, that immediately saved them tons of bandwidth, which meant their teams were less frustrated, the culture was better, and they were able to be more productive at what they were supposed to be doing, what was the highest and best use of that talent and time. And then, of course, we got them from that 39.6 to 50 million in 90 minutes. So sometimes it really just takes an outside perspective.
Yeah, and there's an awareness that has to happen to understand that you need the outside perspective, right? Because we talked a little bit about the entrepreneur business owner is unwilling to let go of control for a variety of reasons, right? And there's a lot of myopia that goes on in their day to day. What have you found is kind of maybe an inflection point, if not an aha moment, where they realize that the current team may not be the ones, as you say, to take us to the next level, and I really need to think about an outside perspective to give me some honest feedback here?
Mm. Well, first of all, I would argue that they know. At least subconsciously, they know. They may try to be in denial even with themselves, but there is also an ego check. I mean, anytime you're running a company, especially a significant size company, there's this element of protecting it and protecting that culture and that tribe because it's your baby. And if you've built it, even if you've built it wonky and weird, there is a defensive posture that we see all the time of, well, this has worked. Well, we did it this way because, and there's a lot of defense, and that's okay. And by the way, kudos for getting it to where you did. God bless, because that's no easy task. And we just do it the best way we can. And what I tell them all the time, because this was me, if I'd only ever run and grown a company that got to 11 million, I didn't know how to run a $30 million company. I'd never done it yet. I needed the advice. And so it's not about not understanding what needs to be done. It's about having the humility and the growth mindset to say, okay, uncle, I got it. I don't have all the answers. I'm pretty darn good at what I do, and I'm really great at my craft. If they own a roofing company or if they, own a healthcare placement company, they could be exceptionally talented at that skill or the thing that they know, not necessarily how to scale companies, because where in the world are we taught that? Nowhere.
Yeah, and I know that's going to resonate with the audience. Thank you for sharing that. I promised you I wanted to talk a little bit about culture and tapping into your Jedi mind tricks of your human behavior background. It's so important that culture is more than just the stuff that's written on the walls, right? And we talked about how important mission and vision is in getting people to want to come to your business. What advice do you offer the audience and how to create that alignment between what really is the mission and building the culture around that?
It starts at the very beginning in the interview process. So in our interview process, we do a 3-stage interview. And so the first one is just technical chops. Do you have what it takes to do this job? And then the second one is about culture and alignment on our core values. And the core values are something that we actually live and breathe. And we run everything, every decision, every conversation. Do we accept a new member? We're a little picky. Will we participate in a particular conference? Anything like that is run through our core values. Does it align? And so that's done. In that second interview, we actually have them come back and present on the core values and how they feel that they can uphold those or that they live those through their life. And you see through that very quickly. If it's just a presentation and you're like, this is not congruent, they don't really believe this stuff, or they can give examples of how and why that's who they really are. So I think getting the right people very early on. The third one is more about how they would do their job well and, performance and things like that. But that second interview is really where it starts. Then it's constant check-ins with them. And one thing that's really important on culture, Dave, this goes back to the behavioral side. It's finding out in the very, very beginning what that person's personal, professional, and financial goals are. Because if they are not able to see a clear path with a step-by-step Candyland board of I am here and through this company and this role and what it is that we're doing and building together, I'm able to achieve my personal, professional, and financial goals, they will not always be engaged. They might be engaged momentarily because it's a means to an end, but they're ultimately collecting a paycheck while they're still searching. So until or unless you can put together a personal plan for them, and by the way, it's not always money. Everybody thinks, oh, the only thing people are going to want is a bigger title and more money. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, I love talking about people's love languages, and, I love really looking into what someone feels is going to be their legacy, what would be ultimately fulfilling for them. And if they say, my goal is to buy a farm and, live sustainably and just, work about 10 hours a week, and then ultimately I want to paint all day. That's okay. That has nothing to do with big titles or money. So how do we get that for you? How do we get you there? And first of all, really meaning it when you're interviewing people and listening to what they really want and why they want that and why that's important. And then setting out that path and that plan for them that shows them through the role that they would be taking. Maybe that's not the right role. Maybe they need a different role inside the organization. So maybe their plan is in year 1 or 2, you're going to do this role until we can train you or get you seasoned enough to move into this other role, which would then ultimately lead to the path you want. If they see that, they're in. They're 100% committed. They're going to be solutions oriented. They're going to do the things they need to do because you're mapping out their future and their success that they said they wanted, not what you said you need.
Nice. We're getting close to the end of the program here, Andrea, but I want to give you the opportunity for the final word to share with the audience any insights that you would like to share that perhaps I didn't touch on here in our conversation so far.
Oh, wow. I would need a lot more time, but I would say this: when you're just starting out and you're first growing the business, the most important thing is to figure out who specifically you serve. And I mean specifically, and in what specific way. Because sometimes people make the mistake, I say often make the mistake of trying to be all things to all people. So if you have a widget that you sell, and you could argue, well, anybody could use that widget. Yes, they could. But the more you niche down and say this specific widget is going to solve this problem for this very niche group of people, you might feel as the entrepreneur like, well, wait, then that means I'm cutting out 95% of the market. I can't do that. I guarantee if you do that, you will become known for what that is. Let's say you only then say you sell that widget to solve this problem for veterans, for example, which I have a strong, heart tug for them. So if that's the case, you become known as that go-to solution for veterans and veterans caretakers. And it could even be veterans that are, under the age of 32, or veterans that have kids, or the more specific you are, the more known you become for that thing. That does not mean you can't sell that widget to other people and solve other problems. But to become known for something early on gives you traction. It gives you momentum. It helps with your marketing. It helps with all your messaging, your sales process, and of course with your delivery. Then you can bifurcate. You can then start a new unit or division and go sell it to plumbers or go sell it to people in the travel industry or whatever you think you want to do. But start with something first. And I will also say one other thing is that people often chase squirrels. And entrepreneurs, and I was so guilty of this, chasing money. You'd have a client or an opportunity that comes through the door and it's not quite right. It's not really what you do. It's 20 degrees off center, but you go, well, we can do it. It's good money. We have the time. We might as well do it. And to be fair, sometimes you have to do that to pay payroll and eat and whatever. But as long as you're constantly reminding yourself of who you are and what your mission is and what your razor focus is, you got to get back in alignment. Instead, those squirrels will end up changing who you are as an organization. And it's very frustrating for your team. You're not going to attract clients or the right kind of talent that way if you're constantly chasing new opportunities. So the discipline of focus, and I'm like, wow, I did not do this. Like, this is me giving advice to my younger self because I did this wrong more often than I did it right. But once I finally calmed down and really zeroed in on focus, that's when everything changed.
That is amazing advice, and it's not something I hear very often, if at all, in this program. So thank you for sharing that. Before I let you go, Andrea, you need to tell the world how people can find you, if they can learn more about you, if they want to work with you. What's the best way to get in touch?
Sure. Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so Andrea Beach. And also, if you go to growthconcierge.org, you'll be able to learn all about the organization. And I'm happy to share my contact information as well, because I remember what it felt like being a struggling entrepreneur that felt like I didn't have anyone to talk to. I certainly couldn't talk to any of my friends or family. If I had a big win or a big loss, they go, "Oh, wow, poor you." They didn't understand what I went through on a daily basis as an entrepreneur. It's not for the faint of heart. I certainly couldn't talk to anyone at the baseball field, or the ballet recital. They didn't get my world. Another organization that I chair and I run is the CEO Club. So if you want to go to the ceoclub.online, you'll be able to see that, you're not alone. There are other people out there that can help you through community, and the right people in your life can help you make the right decisions. And sometimes we all need that, especially entrepreneurs. So if somebody wants to reach me directly, no sales pitches, please. But if somebody wants to reach me, it's Andrea B at growthconcierge.org.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today and for that great invitation for entrepreneurs. I know folks are going to take you up on that offer.
I hope so.
All righty, Andrew, thanks again. And thank you out there for tuning into Behind the Numbers. If you like what you heard today, please do leave us a review. That stuff actually matters, and you know what to do and how to do it. So I'm not going to tell you how to. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the episodes. We've got a lot of great guests coming up in the near future. And until next time, my name is Dave Bookbinder, reminding you that the numbers tell the story, but the people bring it to life. Take care, everybody.